officially signed by both sides next month. Over the years, more than 250,000 people have lost their lives in this conflict, and millions of others have been displaced. Well, for more analysis, we can speak now to Daniel Lansberg-Rodriguez, who is a Latin American analyst and an adjunct lecturer at the Kellogg School of Management, who joins us now from Chicago. Thank you so much for speaking to us. This ceasefire deal comes into effect in a couple of hours from now. What else still needs to be done before this conflict can be entirely confined to the history books?
Well, first off, thank you so much for inviting me to join you today to discuss what is really a watershed moment in Latin America's history. The peace process with the FARC for Colombia represents not only really the end of the cycle of violence in Colombia, but really marks sort of the bookend for the cycle of revolutionary Marxist revolutions in Latin America writ large. What we're seeing right now is sort of progress towards peace, but as you mentioned, there's a lot that remains to be done. The agreement must now pass through a popular referendum in Colombia. Colombian polls are no more don't have no better track record of predicting such results than many polls around the world have lately, and they're all over the board. One poll will say that a majority support the peace process, another poll will say that a majority doesn't. And there's still a question of whether a close result will affect the speed with which the actual peace process can start coming together, which is a risk in a sense, because a lot depends on moving quickly to reintegrate parts of the country that have been separated from the central government for a long time in a way that will allow them to economically tack away from the types of rebellion and a lot of the narco trafficking that has been a major economic driver for some time.
But Daniel, let me just ask you this. Why would anyone in Colombia not be in favor of this peace process going through to a foregone conclusion?
Well, that's a great question. This is a long-standing war. This is a very old war, and it has had many victims. And among them, the 250 some odd thousand that you mentioned before who lost their lives. There's been nearly 5 million displaced. But many Colombians there's few Colombians, in fact, who haven't had their lives touched directly by either the conflict with the FARC or the conflict with other groups such as the ELN or before them M19, which has created a strong sense of a debt being owed, of justice being required. And one of the, or I would say the principal critic of this, or criticism of this peace agreement, is that it essentially gives a pass on some of the more political crimes that may have taken place, basically attacking them as act of war, and putting them through a peace and reconciliation process, which both the Colombian opposition under former President Uribe and, for example, Human Rights Watch have criticized as being a bit toothless, as being unlikely to actually see perpetrators of crimes brought to justice. So in a sense, there's a fundamental question underlying all of this, which is, when is it worthwhile to give up justice for the sake of peace? And there are strong arguments that can be made in either direction.
Okay, well, I'd love to talk to you for longer and ask you some more questions, but we're out of time, I'm afraid. Latin American analyst Daniel Lansberg-Rodriguez, thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Now, it is